Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rochester Bike Summit. Everyone's going to join muted, and we'll keep it that way until we get through the presentation. Please note that there is a chat window available for use today. We'd ask that as you may have questions, as Jaymi, Kevin, and Jarrett are going through their presentation, that you add in those questions typed into the chat window. And we'll do our very best to get to everybody's questions at the end of each section of the presentation. And we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. All right, I still see people are joining. Just in the interest of time, let's add all these folks in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rochester Bike Summit. We have a few folks from City of Rochester and Destination Medical Center that'll be starting their presentation shortly. I just wanted to mention that we have a chat window open. It's the Zoom group chat. You can find that on the bottom of your screen. If you hover over the presentation materials you'll see on your screen, just click on chat and you'll be able to add a question or comment to the entire group or to specific people in there. And we ask that everybody keep muted throughout the presentation today so that Jaymi, Kevin, and Jarrett can get through the presentation materials. And then we will have some sections for question and answer. So we'll queue everybody up when we're ready to discuss. And we just ask that you add in your questions or comments into the chat window, and we'll do our very best to get to everybody in today's session, but might be able to follow up with an email afterwards with any information you might need. I just want to thank everybody for joining on behalf of We Bike Rochester. We're thrilled that we could still host Bike Summit this year amid pandemic circumstances. Everyone, we're grateful that you've been able to stay safe at home and hopefully view this from the comfort and health of your own home. We wanted to share that we're going to also offer some prizes after your participation. So just by joining today, you'll be entered into a drawing. We're going to have some gift cards to give out from our generous sponsors that we're purchasing from them. And those are gift cards to the local bike shops that supported We Bike Rochester and helping Bike Summit stay rolling. That's Eric's Bike Shop, My Bike Guy, Bicycle Sports, and Rochester Cycling. So thank you very much to them. Thank you also to Abe, Old Abe Coffee Company, also to Cafe Steam, Uptown Pilates, among other sponsors. You'll be able to win prizes from them. And so we just want to acknowledge that a lot of these local businesses care about people on bikes, and we just wanted to make sure to recognize them so you know when you're going out looking for products or services, please make sure to support these local businesses. So with that, I'll introduce the team members we have from the City of Rochester and Destination Medical Center. And please remember to use the chat window for any questions, and I'll be sure to ask those questions of the presenters at the end of each of these sections. So we'll be hearing today from Jaymi Wilson and Jarrett Hubbard from City of Rochester. They are both project managers with the city, and also from Kevin Bright, Sustainability Director with Destination Medical Center. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jaymi to get us rolling.
Actually, we're gonna go ahead and start with Kevin for the first few.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jaymi. Thanks, Matt, and also We Bike Rochester and Bike MN for hosting us. We're happy to talk about the projects we've been working on and give a little update, and ideally answer any questions that people have out there too. So the first part of this presentation is meant to just give an update on kind of all things bike planning, bike effort focused, and then we'll cover a little bit about the transit-oriented development study that's underway under Jarrett's leadership. and have a few slides about some of the bike planning that's associated with that study and the transit circulator. But to start the slide in front of you that you have here, and I have two screens here, so my camera's here, and then I'm looking at you all this way, so that's why I'm looking in a weird direction. But this first slide deals with City Loop project, which is associated or a part of the overall vision for the integrated transportation studies that was created in partnership with the City of Rochester and the DMC. And out of that study came a recommendation of creating a biking and walking trail amenity downtown that was affectionately called City Loop. And the first phase of kind of the build out of this project is going on as we speak. Will be completed in August 2020, as you can see, and there's three primary legs that are being incorporated as part of this project downtown. There's two north-south, one traveling north, one traveling south along 4th Avenue Southwest in the center of the city of Rochester, then an east-west corridor along Center Street. And these kind of initial starts to the project were purposeful. The City Loop in general was meant to connect the 100 miles of bike trails that kind of puncture throughout the city of Rochester and connect them with one bike trail amenity that's goes through in and about downtown Rochester. So yeah, the project, like I said, we're working on right now, the goal is to separate bicyclists or provide an amenity that will separate bicyclists from the car traffic on these corridors, and slated to be done in August 2020. Next slide. This is a little bit of a capture update on our 4th Street Southwest project. So last year, in partnership with the City of Rochester and the DMC and We Bike Rochester and others, we opened the first protected bikeway in downtown Rochester on 4th Street Southwest. This has been up and running for a couple or just about a year now at this point. And kind of the update for this is some flexible delineators have been installed. Those delineators are basically just a physical separation between car traffic and bike travel on this corridor. The annual counts for the number of bicyclists that are using this corridor in the downtown are going to start this fall. So we'll start getting some usage counts pretty soon yet this year. I'm seeing a couple of questions in the chat box, so I'll just address some of those now. So this project is a good representation of using bike boxes, which is a way to, at a stoplight or traffic signal, give preference to bicyclists to move first, especially if they're pursuing a left-hand turn, and allows a bike to queue in front of cars. As a way to try to give bicyclists, keep them safe, but also give them preference in some situations too, as it relates to traffic. So bike boxes were integrated in this 4th Street Southwest project. And last year we did, as part of this opening, had some guidance and a training on how to use a bike box, and worked with a lot of community members, over 100, on how to properly use them. But sounds like we might want to consider doing that again. So maybe we can talk more about that too. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, there was one other question too about the City Loop project. Will the Center Street section tie into the bike lanes on East Center Street? Yeah, that's the plan, is for it to tie into the existing bike infrastructure. So both the East Center Street bike lanes, but also the north-south protected bike trailway that runs along the river was kind of the intent for that. On this slide here, we have some future projects of note. So we're working on a couple projects as we speak, as we just talked about, but also planning for the future here. So we are working on bike lanes that are integrated in the North Broadway project. That project's been delayed to 2021 due to some bidding that came in a little bit higher than expected. So that, I think, will be re-released in its current state next year to try to see if that will move forward then, and the bidding environment's a little bit more favorable for the city. Also, there's a trail along Broadway on the south side of Highway 14 that would connect the Crossroads and Hy-Vee. So that project is slated for next year. Also in 2021, some capital improvement dollars have been requested to integrate bike parking. And my understanding is this is for embellishing some of the bike parking amenities that are associated with parking garages. The city, and specifically the community development departments, was planning on releasing an RFP for the bike and pedestrian master plan update yet this year. Due to COVID and some kind of for budgetary reasons, making sure that we're being mindful of kind of the new normal we're all dealing with. That RFP release has been delayed a bit. It's still the intent to move forward with this bike and ped master plan update, but I think next year is kind of when that discussion will start again. And then in 2020,
RFP, please.
Sorry, what's that? Oh, RFP. Yeah, request for proposals. So that would be basically the city in a document saying we're interested in having a company help us create a updated bike and ped master plan. And then any company that can provide those services would respond. So the RFP is a request for proposals from those consultants for that project scope. And then in 2023, there's a Canadian Pacific Rail Spur Trail connection. And this is between 16th Street Southeast and 20th Street Southeast. And it's using that railway for a bike trail. And this project was news to me. I didn't know this was on the books. And admittedly, that's about the extent of my understanding of the project. Still a few years away, but this is in Southeast Rochester. So to help get people grounded a little bit, the northwest portion of the yellow line there is 16th Street Southeast, and that's I think and 3rd Avenue Southeast. So this is kind of looking to reuse that railway in that area. I'm sorry I don't have more information for you, but I can share that as desired. My understanding, I don't know about the active rail line question, seeing that in the chat box there. But I can track down some more information if there's questions on that. Next slide, please. So those are kind of an update on the projects. So quick summary, City Loop is underway, or at least the first phase of it. And it's along the 3rd and 4th corridor, Center Street. 4th Avenue Southwest got some delineators added to it. A few projects that are upcoming in the coming years that we just talked about. And then we're going to shift gears to the bike sharing program that we've been working on over the past couple of years here in collaboration with 10 organizations, city departments, and county departments, I should say, as well. Last year we operated a free bike sharing program in partnership that the 10 organizations basically made this happen, where we reused the 200 bikes that were donated to the city from Nice Ride to offer a free bike sharing program. So in 2019, we offered free bikes at a number of locations across the city. Some were at public buildings for public use. Others were maybe a little bit more private, and then some hotels that were located along the trail system in Rochester also were interested in hosting bikes. So we operated this last year between May and October in 2019, and over 1,200 trips were taken on these bikes, and for a variety of purposes. So we did give an update to City Council a few months back on this. Jaymi and I did. And it was very widely popular. The most frequented site or place where bikes were signed out were the library, public library. They were already kind of well set up in order to have a public-facing bike sign-out process, given that they work with books and do that on a daily basis. Also, one addition to the 2019 program that we made was adding electric cargo bikes. So the city purchased a couple electric cargo bikes and offered them for free for use. And were hosted at the public library in order to allow that to happen. The cargo bikes were also intentional because we were finding out through the survey work that the library was helping conduct that a lot of people were using this to carry groceries. Understanding that the transportation system didn't quite work for them from a timing perspective in order to go make these grocery store runs. So they were using Nice Ride bikes to go to the grocery store, and then we supplemented kind of that need by providing electric cargo bike as well. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the Nice Ride program donated 200 bikes to the city, and what we realized quickly was that we were using maybe 70 of these bikes pretty heavily, but the remainder were sitting in a storage area that the city operates. So what this bike subcommittee decided to do is offer 100 of the bikes up for a grant opportunity. So the city holds on to 100 bikes to continue to operate this bike sharing program. And we'll talk about some of the adjustments that we're thinking about this upcoming year. And then granting 100 bikes to individuals and organizations who need them in the area. So basically, we created a grant program. We worked with the city to make sure that we were meeting all the kind of legal requirements of doing so. And then late April, we reached out to individuals that applied. We had over 175 people apply for one of these bikes. At this point, we were only able to meet or provide bikes to 31 of the people. There was a pretty good evaluation process, I think, and really trying to get bikes in people's hands who needed them most. So we were trying to meet a community need and a need of theirs in order to help them move around. And it also provided some other things that the city was interested in helping promote too, like use of the city bike trails. So the individuals have the bikes already, and then we're going to work with organizations to receive kind of the remaining 70 bikes as we start to get a little bit lesser regulations, guidelines around COVID-19. So that should be coming up, we hope, pretty soon to then also provide these bikes to those organizations that are listed there. Next slide.
Very good, and I can take it from there. If there are any other questions from Kevin, feel free to share those in the chat box and we can make sure we get those answered as well as we're going through. So I have worked, since I started with the city, I've worked with a couple of different aspects of micromobility. And one of the projects that I worked on last summer was the pilot with the Lime scooters. So wanted to just share a little bit about that, as since this is a group that tends to share the trails with you and then directly impacts this particular group. So I'm trying to get, oops, sorry, got things popping up here. But we did one of the things with the pilot that we recognized is that we didn't currently have any sort of ordinances that would prevent a company from coming to Rochester and just dropping either bikes or scooters for sharing, any of that sort of vehicles for getting around. And over the winter this year, we did do some updates to our ordinances, which at least prevents that from just happening without the group having to come in contract with the city. So we've done some ordinances, but it doesn't really affect anything beyond the companies that are hoping to come here. So once we had that in place and moving along that process, we did a request for proposals reaching out to companies looking to have an e-bike and scooter sharing program back in town this summer. Now, this is before COVID started. So while we have gone through the process, we've we actually just received a proposal from one company, and we've looked at it. They did a great proposal, but all of that was supposed to come to a head about the time that we all got sent home for a while. So while this is going on, really the big question is, what do we have to do to be able to safely launch? So I'm still working with the Olmsted County Public Health, working with our leadership at the city to make sure that people feel that it's the right time to move forward with something like this. But it does give us, that proposal would actually allow for 50 e-bikes and 200 scooters. We had about 200 scooters last summer, if somebody's looking to compare the numbers. That's about where they felt like that was a pretty good fit based on the information from last year. It was a success from Lime's perspective last summer. It was a successful pilot. They had relatively few issues. They're used to having many more scooters than that. And actually we saw really great ridership. So it was a successful program and gave people that one additional opportunity for how to get around our city. And the other thing that we've talked about some with our team is that the more usage that we have of some of the, particularly the downtown bike lanes, it does, while it increases the traffic in those spaces, that can be seen as both a positive and a negative, because it does encourage the city to continue moving forward with prioritizing that space. And then just as a note on the bottom of this, the free bike program would continue to operate at the library in 2020, as we were just talking about with Kevin. But this would be in addition to that, give people that opportunity for trying out the scooters and trying out the e-bikes. And then this is a conceptual drawing of actually what we're looking at for the West Transit Village. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, in a moment here, Jarrett will actually give you a little more of a deep dive on some of the transit-oriented development happening. But this is the West, what is known as the West Shuttle Lot right now, out on West 2nd Street. That is a Mayo park and ride, essentially, shuttle lot. And we have been working on a land use plan for that space. And what I just wanted to point out here was that as we're having those discussions, one of the important pieces of that discussion is how do we utilize the transit villages to add on to what we can do with both bike and pedestrian paths. So the nice thing about where that transit village is, it's currently right along Cascade Lake. So there's actually really nice trail hookups right there. But if you see the dotted lines on this, the plan is that there would be additional bike paths throughout the transit village, allowing people to get to the other amenities that are on that site. And that the amenities there include, as Jarrett will talk about here in a moment, it includes the bus rapid transit that has been part of the discussions of our ever-changing transit world, but also there will be some housing there. There's the opportunity for some stores, potentially restaurants. We don't know exactly what that will look like as it develops, but there will be the goal is to have things to do there that are not just parking. And so with that, we also want to make sure that this is a bike and pedestrian friendly space where there's both bike parking there if people want to be able to park a bike and actually bring the transit to downtown, but also that we can hook into the 100 miles worth of trails that are here in Rochester. With that, I will turn it over to Jarrett for, do we have?
Jaymi, I had a few questions come in for you. There was a question about Olmsted County Public Health and Minnesota Public Health having guidance on whether the scooters are recommended. And thankfully, Cassie from Olmsted County Public Health did respond in the chat that a scooter request was sent through for technical specialists and the safety officers. who did send on their guidance and recommendations to the city. That's correct, right?
That is correct. Yep. That's
Thank you.
And so we're just working through what that actually looks like with the company, and then also making sure that our leadership and council is comfortable with that moving forward. So we are working through that process.
Thank you, Jaymi. The other another question that came in was from Randy. He's curious about the transit villages. Will the parking for cars go away in those transit villages?
No, in fact, the idea of the transit villages is that it will actually increase the parking in those spaces, with the idea of having the rapid transit there, people can park there and not park downtown. So it will definitely it will be a much denser parking, but what it does also allows for other amenities. It allows to have some shops, to have some housing there, to, like with it being right along the lake, they've talked about, do you put in some type of restaurant where you can actually utilize the fact that it's one of the places in town where we can actually overlook water. So, so it will actually increase the amount of parking there.
Okay. And about those amenities, there's another question that came in. Could you speak to any bike-specific amenities that are possible or planned in the transit villages, such as showering or changing areas, or secure indoor bike storage?
So right now we are not far enough into that process. What we were really doing here was a conceptual land use plan. So with the idea, just to give a little information on this right hand side of this is where it would be a Mayo parking ramp, and a pretty significant one. And we know that they currently in some of their parking ramps have some bike parking, and then most of the part of the rest of the site would be parking ramps and amenities for the general public to use. And there isn't any specifics around what those amenities might look like for bikes. So I would say, as we are moving forward through this, I know similar to some of the other transit-oriented design pieces that have been going on, we're looking for feedback and what people are wanting, and definitely get the word out there that is like what those amenities are that are the best suited for a space like this.
And those suggestions, would those best be routed through a certain channel with the city?
Yep, actually at the very end of this, Jarrett's going to give some information for the transit-oriented design pieces. And then of course here, part of the unknown here is that while we have this land use plan, we don't actually have a full knowledge of who will be doing the developing on different areas of this. So some of that is still in flux. This is just kind of in a conceptual plan of what it may look like.
Thank you. And another question that came in about the scooters and bike share program is a question about enforcement of the riding on sidewalk ordinance, as well as other traffic laws downtown as they apply to a newer mode of transportation for some in the scooters, as well as the electric bicycles.
So, this is an ongoing challenge. I think most of us are aware that we have people who ride bikes on the sidewalk. We had people who rode the scooters on the sidewalk last year. We have had some discussions with our counterparts within the police force, and they do have more people who will be patrolling that area. So part of it would be just heightened patrol, and their goal is really education, not punitive. They've been pretty open about the fact that they don't want to be ticketing either bikers or scooter riders for riding on sidewalks. What they really want to do is figure out how we encourage them to get off the sidewalks and be where they're supposed to be. Now, there is also, with the proposal that came through, there's actually some newer technology that will be happening on the scooters, where the scooters will be able to tell when they're on a sidewalk. And so we can work on, if someone is on the sidewalk, we can set some parameters where it sounds like what we can do is set some parameters where they can slow them down. I have not actually had my hands on them, so I don't want to speak out of turn there, but that's what came through with the proposal. So that also allows us to increase our safety even if people are doing the wrong thing. Now, one advantage, right now there's a lot less traffic downtown. So if we were to bring them in, one advantage is that people may be a little more comfortable being on the road because they're not quite as much in traffic. The general gist in the scooter communities have been that they say that people typically ride on the sidewalks until they're comfortable with them, and then they're more comfortable being in traffic. Most of us who have ridden bikes since we were kids probably can relate to that. The challenge here is that we're learning as adults. So you have to get that uncertainty out of the way somewhere, and sometimes it's just not done appropriately. So there will be, like I say, some heightened police enforcement, but the goal, again, is educational, not punitive.
Thank you. The question, last question that came in on this section, just so we can keep moving along,
Sure.
was the education that happens for both cyclists, people on scooters and people on bikes. Is there opportunity also for, or opportunity and interest for also educating people in cars about sharing the road with these other vehicles?
I think there's always that opportunity. I think that it's harder to, with people who are getting on the scooters, we have the option of sending them a message right within the app telling them, here's the right way to handle this. This is where you're supposed to be. So I think anything that we can do to reach out to our community at large. And we did, yes, we have talked about that both with our police force, but then also with the scooter companies, that doing some of that education and promo that reaches not only the people who are riding scooters or the e-bikes, but also in addition, reaching the general community is always a positive, because the more that people are aware that they are there and that, yes, they are supposed to be on the road, because one of the challenges we ran into last summer was obviously pedestrians don't want them on the sidewalks, but then you have people who don't realize that they are supposed to be on the road and so are upset because they're on the road. So finding that balance is tough, but I think anything we can do to educate our community at large will only help us in the long run.
Thank you very much, Jaymi. That is helpful to know about the regard for safety for all humans on roadways and sidewalks, no matter their mode. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And with that, Jarrett, do you want to take things over? And as you are, thank you very much, Noel, for your question.
So Jaymi did a wonderful job of giving us kind of a basic background of what's been going on. Let me try to fill in any holes. I'm here tonight to talk about a project entitled New Rapid Transit for a Growing Equitable Rochester Transit-Oriented Development Planning Study. Very, very long title. What does that mean? What that means is we have this future rapid transit system coming in, or high frequency transit system serving downtown Rochester coming on in, and that's expected to be open by 2025. And how do we want to make sure that we as a community work with that transit system in the future, that we can make sure that we have riders and we have people that want to ride the system. So through this study, what we're looking at doing is trying to grow the amount of people that live or work along this future transit route, so that we make sure we have ridership and we have people interested in riding this future system. So my presentation is kind of broken up into three things here. So let's first talk about what is rapid transit. So go ahead, Jaymi, you're good. first, it's rapid transit comes from concepts of the master plan, the city's comprehensive plan, the DMC development plan, all talked about this concept of improving transit downtown. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from this concept that we're expecting up to 30,000 additional employment jobs downtown by 2040. Well, we all can't have those people driving downtown, not only for the congestion and traffic issues that we have, but also where do we park all those additional cars? So for that, we have to try to get people out of their cars and either into a transit system or walking and biking. So you can see our existing mode share right now is only about 10% on transit. We're trying to, with this system, get it to 30, and then 7 to 13 for walking and biking. You can, next slide, Jaymi. So what are we really talking about for rapid transit? Well, back in November of 2019, the City Council went ahead and approved what's called bus rapid transit. And you hear me said the words a couple of times, rapid transit, we just shortened that. It was formerly known as the circulator. And then just this month, the City Council went ahead and approved the route that this system would work on. And it's on 2nd Street, starting on the west from the West Transit Village that Jaymi just was talking about, move through the St. Mary's Hospital area, through the Mayo Gonda area on 2nd and 2nd, hit 3rd Street, take a right on 3rd, take a right on 4th, and then back a right on Broadway back north to head back west to the Transit Village. Stations, you'll see in a second here, are still up for conversation, and if you have some thoughts on that, you can utilize my feedback channels to hit me back on those stations as well. But what are we talking about rapid transit? Well, we're talking about not your normal buses. These would be extended buses or 60-foot articulated buses. Most people see these and think of, these are the buses that have the accordion in the middle. Well, why do we need these buses? Is because that size bus, because we have to carry that many people on the system. Right now, we're projecting roughly about 9,000 riders per day. To accommodate those people, that would be buses that they have to carry up to 100 to 120 riders. And right now, operations, we're proposing that a bus would come to every single station roughly every 5 minutes during the peak time and between 10 and 15 minutes off peak. Service would be roughly from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Friday, with some shorter hours on the weekend. Talked about that these would be special dedicated stations that would be different than the stations that you see currently on the RPT system. And yes, we are talking about the buses will be able to accommodate bicycles. Most bus rapid transit systems across the country that utilize the 60-foot articulated buses have bus storage within the vehicle, but we are talking about you could, as you can see in the picture there, also do a rack outside the vehicle. But that's some of those details we'll have to continue working on. Next slide, Jaymi. So now that we talked a little bit about what bus rapid transit is and what the system may look like, let's talk a little bit again about what we're trying to do with this project. I always tell folks the purpose of this project is really to connect the transit system with the surrounding neighborhoods. How can we make those two work together? The first element of that is making sure we pick the right stations. Obviously, we have the West Transit Village out west, and then the St. Mary's campus station, and then 2nd and 2nd with the Gonda. And then stations in between there, we're trying to figure out where is the right point to work with those neighborhoods. Where do people want to go if they're on this system, and stops that they might want to work with. So that's one part of the project that we're working on right now. This second part of the project is we're looking to try to grow and develop those areas around those stations. So do we need additional housing? What does that housing look like around those stations? How much of that housing is affordable housing? Do we need additional retail or restaurants around those stations? What does that look like, and how does that mix with housing? What's the bike and pedestrian experience around those stations? And that we'll talk more about that in a second. How do we engage the community and make these stations someplace that people want to be at. And finally, the main reason why I'm here presenting to you guys tonight is we want to make sure that this is a multimodal system, that you can ride your bike or walk to these stations, get on the bus, go to a different other side of town, get off, and continue riding your bike. So what do we need to do that? Well, we're trying to make additional pedestrian and bicycle connections. And tonight we'll focus just on some the proposed bicycle connections that are coming out the study right now. So Jaymi, next slide. So the first slide we'll look at is a map west of 52, over by the West Transit Village that Jaymi referred to. And on this map, you see both blue and purple lines and dots and circles. The blue lines are all proposed bike connections that came out of previous plans, if that was the DMC development plan or if that was the comprehensive plan. And you've also heard Kevin earlier talk about the city is doing a new bike master plan, and that hopefully will kick off later this year. But what I want to focus in tonight are those purple lines. So working from west to east, you'll see a new bicycle connection along West Circle Drive. Then you'll see a connection within the West Transit Village and a connection across 2nd Street to the neighborhoods and businesses on the other side of 2nd. One of the primary areas that we're looking at putting a new station with this system is at 19th Avenue. So if you focus on the 19th Avenue, there's a small little blue dot just west of 52 on there, and you'll see purple line going north and south coming from 19th Avenue. The north line, you'll go new bicycle connection moving a couple blocks to the north, then a block to the west, and connects you back into the Cascade Lake Park and the trails around the park as well, the lake as well. And I should also point out that yes, this would be a system that you could get on, ride the system to the West Transit Village, get off, and then you would have much more direct access to the trails around Cascade Lake Park. Coming from 19th moving south, you're looking at a north-south route that would come from 2nd Street on 19th Avenue, roughly down to 6th Street, and that would get you your east and west connection down south of 2nd Street. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to point out. We are proposing a new connection off of the trail around Cascade Lake Park to the residential neighborhood just to the northwest of the lake. Jaymi, you can move to the next slide. And now we're looking at more of the downtown or St. Mary's area. And once again, blue lines are a lot of the study work that's been done before. I'll focus in on a bunch of the purple lines that we're kind of proposing out of this study. One of the first things you might see is we are talking about an improved connection across Highway 52 along 2nd Street. And then we'll move along to 13th Avenue, just across from St. Mary's, doing new north-south connection on the north side of 2nd. And then probably one of the largest connections that we're talking about proposing is a new east-west connection coming out of downtown along 4th Street. That would help make sure we can get people connected out east. And then a new connection south of 4th Street. Right now, you can see on this map, it's proposed along 3rd Avenue. We will have to see. We love your opinion on that, if the 3rd is the right one. But we're looking at maybe a couple different options, either to the east or the west of that route. But we definitely want to see a north-south route coming from that area. So if you have any suggestions, you can hit me up on that. So on that note, let's move to how you can reach me. Most of this study work is we do have a city webpage for this project. There you'll find a lot more information about station locations, the types of development. Those are the pictures that you're looking at on your right-hand side of this page. Proposed in these areas, what does that development look like? But for a quick shortcut, you can access that at rochestermm.gov/rapidtransittod. That will get you to our website, and on our website we do have a more interactive feature that will allow you, I think it's one of the first links on that page, where you can play with maps and dive in and out of maps to help facilitate you and get some better idea of what the land uses and developments that we're talking about proposing along the route. You can, if you just want to send me an email, you can hit me at rapidtransit@rochestermm.gov, or you can always leave me a voicemail on the project voice line at 507-328-2025. With that, that's what I had to present on this. Matt, if you have any questions that I can try to answer.
Yeah, we'll go through a few. Thank you so much, Jarrett. So the question and suggestion channel that you offered, and that email address and phone number, how will those suggestions and questions be responded to? Will they be implemented or considered for future plans?
Yes. One, let me first say is my and the several individuals who I have working on that, working access to that email account to try to respond to every single email. Please understand that we might not get to you back that day or even the next day, but it's our attempt to try to gather information and respond to everyone. As part of the process of the actual study, we are collecting all those emails and doing a report out that'll be included. So all those emails and all those topics that are come on in via either the email or the voicemail will be put in into the report at the end of the document. So you'll have that as if you're really interested in seeing how many emails and voice message we have received. But then, yeah, if it involves around the rapid transit or along 2nd Street, obviously you can, I will try to hit you back with a good response. Otherwise, I'm thinking, you know, if we are leading down doing a new bike master plan, I can get you to Public Works to help maybe that's a better implementation, to contact them if you're talking about something outside of downtown or else away from 2nd Street. And also, there is a couple other development plans going on. Mainly the one that comes to mind is community development is doing a new plan for the Ampey Kmart area. And so community development, hopefully we'd be kicking that off here in a month or two as well. So hopefully I'll try to get you to the right channel.
Thank you, Jarrett. It's just affirming to hear the City of Rochester's approach to field citizen feedback and apply it to future plans. So it's clear to 60 people here, you know, that the city's listening for that feedback and suggestions and opportunities, because obviously city's trying to make this work for all people of all abilities. So thank you for offering those channels to individuals.
Yeah.
I'll start with, I just plugged in a question about the bus rapid transit. Will that replace privately operated buses along the thoroughfares?
That is our intent. We're still in negotiations with Mayo, but Mayo is very interested in getting rid of their charter service along the route. But that is the intent. Yes. Okay.
Thank you. There were a couple of suggestions about accommodating bikes in the buses versus outside of the buses. Can you kind of talk about the type of equipment that the buses will be?
Like I said, some of that detail is still yet to be determined. The project would open in 2025. We probably wouldn't be buying buses until 2023, so we have some time to figure out some of those details. But like I said, as a cyclist myself, my preference would be for inside the bus type situation. I visited a system in Indianapolis that had a very similar 60-foot articulated buses. And what they did is in the area where they had the accordion or the flexible piece, they had 2 or 3 bike racks for people to put their bike at that location. I've seen other places, many people have probably visited the cities and ridden the blue line or the green line light rail, and you see that they have kind of more vertical storage on those systems. So it's to be determined yet, but yeah, that is the plan, to try to accommodate bikes.
Thank you, Jared. And it may be too soon to tell, but what are these wonderful buses going to cost a rider to ride on?
Yeah, that is a very good question. Still too early to figure that out. We do have an estimated operating cost of roughly about $4 million a year for this system. what I've been telling folks is, and I see we have mayor and city council member, and we've all been talking this talking through this conversation a bunch here. So I don't want to speak like we have a decision or anything in mind, but that's to be determined.
Thank you, Jared. Understandable. And another question came in about the increased usage we've seen on recreational trails. There are a lot more pedestrian, a lot more people walking, a lot more people biking out and about on trails. So there's interest, is there ever an opportunity for segmented pedestrian, cyclist, and other surfaces to kind of designate speeds and abilities?
Short answer, yes. In fact, Jaymi, if you want to scroll back one slide, when I was having a conversation with our Public Works Department about the proposed purple lines, one that I probably didn't really point out is along Broadway coming from 6th Street to the south. We talked about that maybe that would be a route or a connection that would probably necessitate the need to do a bike portion and then a walking portion. So if anyone has thoughts or comments about where that type of implementation would be useful, of course, you can always shoot me an email and I can get it to the parks if that's more appropriate. But yeah, Public Works is aware of that, and we've been having conversations.
Thank you for describing that amenity. Out of curiosity, the proposed TOD plan, the purple segments, has there been discussion of those types of amenities? Will they be bike lanes? Will they be buffered bike lanes, separated bike lanes? Do you have any idea or sense of what the city of Rochester might be planning for those?
I think it probably depends on the route and where it's connecting to. I think many of you might have caught that I've talked about, we're doing not only bicycle connections, but we are talking about doing pedestrian connections. So I would safe to assume at this point that many of these purple lines would be more of bike lanes or in the road type of situations instead of a grade separated trail or anything of that nature. But once again, if people have a preference for something, please, that's the type of feedback that we're interested in hearing.
Thank you. And the best way to give that feedback, would you repeat that again? And then we'll also send it out to We Bike Rochester members and all registrants as a kind of a recap. Thanks for bringing it up, Jaymi.
Sure, yeah, once again, that's rapidtransit@rochestermm.gov is the email address. And then the phone number is 507-328-2025. Awesome.
It sounds like a lot of the commentary in the chat throughout this section of the presentation revolved around safety, just probably instilling more comfort for people on bikes, sharing pavement with both people in cars and people walking. So thank you to the City of Rochester for keeping all of our well-being as fellow humans using these roadways and trails as that guiding principle for the plans. Convenience as a close second.
Good.
That's very good. If there are any other questions, I don't see many more trickling in. We do encourage you to please use the rapid transit at rochestermn.gov or the phone number 507-328-2025 to share any of those suggestions or feedback. We saw some great ideas come through in the chat window, and we'd encourage you to share that feedback directly with Jarrett and the team at City of Rochester.
Yeah, and if it's possible that you can share some of those comments that I received with myself and my teammates, I would love to see those as well.
Awesome, thank you. Well, it is 4:55, and we just wanted to take a brief moment to acknowledge there's a lot of local businesses that support We Bike Rochester's programming throughout the year, and in particular Bike Summit, and that's AARP, QBP, also known as Quality Bicycle Products, My Bike Guy, Bicycle Sports, Rochester Cycling, Eric's Bikeboard and Ski, Arrive Rochester, Little Thistle, Cafe Steam, Uptown Pilates, and Grayed Up Coffee House and Theater. As you're out and about in the community, please remember these businesses as you're looking for different products and services. They are really the businesses that have stepped up to support our initiatives and programming to educate, advocate, and increase ridership for people on bikes. So we just want to say a very profound thank you to all of them. Without their involvement, we wouldn't be able to have the wonderful people from the City of Rochester and Destination Medical Center. So thank you very much to Jaymi, Kevin, and Jarrett for sharing your time this evening with all of us. Finally, we want to thank everybody who participated today. Thank you so much for joining. And we'd encourage you to participate in a brief contest this evening to please visit your favorite drive-through coffee destination. And we will post a link to where you can share some of that information. We really enjoy seeing where you get to and where your bike adventure might take you. So I'll drop that into the chat right now. Feel free to take your ride tonight. Share any information about your ride in the chat in the Skype link I just dropped in the chat. And we encourage you to participate in the virtual social rides that happen every Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Speaking of Tuesdays, we will continue Bike Summit in this virtual setting starting next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Please join us. You'll be hearing from Safe Routes to Schools and Bike MN on their programming for this year and beyond. And we encourage you to register through Eventbrite or Facebook. Make sure to get your tickets so that you can get that Zoom access info. All right, with that, I didn't see any other questions come through. Thank you all so much for staying till the very end. Please join the virtual social ride, and there'll be a video chat, kind of everyone can join in, talk about their ride, share any other things they saw while they're out and about, and their favorite coffee destination at 8 o'clock tonight. So just join that Skype link. All right, with that, thank you all so much. Matt from We Bike Rochester signing off. We Bike Rochester is a chapter of Bike MN, Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. If you're not a member already, please join. We have recorded this session and we will post it to a YouTube link or another mechanism so that you have access to it later. Thank you all so much for joining. Take care and ride safe.